Hey guys, tonight we're climbing a lonely spiral of stone stairs out on a jagged Roman coastline where the sea breathes salt and fog and the night wraps everything in damp velvet. You're not a soldier or a sailor or even a poet, though you might scribble like one on your lunch scraps. No, tonight you are something weirder, a Roman lighthouse keeper. It's the kind of job that sounds vaguely noble, but mostly involves fighting with flame-resistant tunics, squinting into the abyss, and getting pecked by gulls before breakfast. A stiff wind slaps your cheeks as you reach the summit of the tower, a dizzying height above the swirling waves. There's a thick smell of burning olive oil already leaking from the fire chamber, and the flame, your flame, is flickering a little too enthusiastically in the early night breeze. Welcome to your shift, which will be 12 hours long or longer if your replacement oversleeps again. He will. You probably won't survive this shift with your dignity intact, but you'll certainly gain a fresh appreciation for windburn and the joys of wearing socks made from woven goat hair. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It begins like most of your nights, before darkness even finishes falling. You drag a small amphora of oil up the steep stairs, trying not to drop it like you did last week when your ankle gave out and your supervising priest made you do temple shifts for a month in penance. As you reach the lantern room, the topmost chamber, you're greeted by the welcome sight of the burning brazier. It's already alight, but it'll need attention. Constant attention. Roman lighthouses, or Pharisees as some call them in imitation of that famous Egyptian one, aren't automated wonders. They're stone towers stuffed with labor, soot, and the occasional small mystery. Your job? Keep that flame visible to ships tossing on the sea miles away. The only problem is that oil fires don't behave. You've got to monitor the burn rate, trim the wicks, adjust the air vents, and pray the wind doesn't change direction. If it does, your little chimney system turns into a smokestack from Hades. 1 minute it's glowing warmly. The next it's coughing up a smoke demon and sending you scrambling for your rag hood. Tonight, you make the rounds of the windbreaks, wooden panels that barely hold back the gusts, while cursing the engineers who decided that holes in the floor helped with ventilation. Sure, they help. And they also let rats and cold drafts tickle your ankles. You test the light's reach, leaning over the edge with a polished bronze mirror held just right to reflect the blaze toward the sea. That's part of your job, too, manipulating the beam. Not that it's a beam in any modern sense. It's more like a glowing suggestion. Still, you're proud of it. The captains say they can spot it from leagues away, when the sky's clear and the gods aren't in a mood. But storms are frequent, especially in these months, and on cloudy nights the light feels smothered, claustrophobic. You wonder if the ships even know you're up here, dancing around with oil pots and trying not to set your hem on fire. Some of them do. There's an occasional whistle blown from the decks, a long, slow call into the night that reaches your ears with eerie delay. You wave back, though no one sees you. Maybe the gods do. That'd be nice. And while we're on the subject of divine visibility, you should know the flame itself isn't just practical. It's symbolic. At least according to one retired philosopher who stopped by the tower 3 weeks ago. He called it a mortal imitation of Apollo's chariot. You smiled and nodded while wondering if he'd help carry oil upstairs. He didn't. Historians still argue whether lighthouse keeping was considered an honor or a punishment. On paper, it's a civic duty, ensuring safe passage for merchant ships, which means taxes, which means empire. In practice, it feels like solitary confinement with slightly better scenery. The work is isolating. You speak to the fire more than to other people. You whistle songs to yourself and hope your voice carries down the shaft to where your backup keeper is supposed to be napping. Though napping often becomes vanishing for hours. Last week you climbed down after dawn to find him asleep outside the tower, under an overturned basket. He claimed he was communing with Neptune. Sure, you rub your wrists. The work is physically grinding. Everything's heavy, everything's uphill, and the heat of the lantern room sticks to your skin even when the night air is cold enough to freeze the goat's milk you forgot outside. And yet, there's a strange comfort here. The routines are brutal but simple. Oil in, fire steady, wicks trimmed, mirrors polished, windbreak adjusted. Repeat every quarter hour. Time folds in on itself. Some nights you barely notice the hours passing. Others stretch like wet leather, resistant and clammy. To stay awake, you nibble stale bread soaked in vinegar. You chew dried figs so hard your jaw clicks. One keeper brought dice and tried to play solitaire. He dropped them down the shaft and spent 2 hours swearing. Somewhere, a gull laughs. The hours drag. Below, the sea keeps whispering. It's always there, hissing and retreating, hissing and retreating. You've been up here so many nights that the rhythm of the waves has synced with your heartbeat. You listen, not for beauty, but for the wrong kind of sound. The crunch of hull on rocks. That's the fear. That you'll hear the crash and know the flame failed. That someone trusted you and you missed your cue. You tug the wick a little closer to the oil pool, just in case. The night's only just begun. The climb is brutal every time. You've lost track of how many steps there are from the storeroom to the flame chamber, but your legs remember. They remind you with each creak of your knees and the dull ache in your calves that this is not a job for comfort seekers or anyone who dislikes stairs. You heave the next amphora of oil against your side, fingers digging into the rough ceramic, and begin the slow, punishing trudge upward. The staircase spirals along the inner wall of the tower, narrow enough that your shoulder brushes the cold stone as you go. The air grows warmer the higher you climb, and not in a cozy way, more like stepping gradually into a bread oven. Sweat beads on your forehead despite the night chill outside. You reach the top, breath shallow, and lower the jug with a grunt onto the soot-dark floor near the brazier. This is your flame. It sits inside a curved, dome-like structure lined with reflective bronze plates, a patchwork of polished and dented surfaces hammered into shape by someone with either great ambition or terrible eyesight. The design is meant to amplify and project the flame's glow outward, giving ships a clear target to sail toward. It works, mostly. If the mirrors aren't too grimy, if the wind isn't too strong, if the oil feeds evenly, if the gods feel generous. The brazier itself is a large metal basin filled with wicks soaked in thick olive oil. Nothing fancy, nothing magical, just good old-fashioned combustion. You refill the basin carefully, trying not to spill. Oil is precious, and last week you got a dressing down from the quartermaster for dripping too much down the drainage hole. The fire catches easily. This part you've practiced endlessly, and soon the flames dance again, wavering in the drafty tower top. You reach for the iron rod used to adjust the wick height, slowly twisting it to fine-tune the intensity of the flame. Too high and it burns too hot, eating up your oil supply. Too low, and the light won't pierce the mist. There's no scale or gauge to tell you what's right. Just your eyes, your gut, and a whole lot of trial and error. You watch the fire flicker, shifting hues from pale yellow to deep orange as it settles. Smoke curls upward through the vented dome, drawn out by cleverly placed openings in the roof. Openings that also, inconveniently, let in rain and the occasional bird. Your tunic still smells faintly of pigeon droppings from that incident 3 nights ago. While the fire burns, you clean. You have to. Soot builds up fast, and if you let it accumulate, it clogs the vents and dulls the mirrors. You take a damp rag and wipe down the closest plate, careful not to smear more than you remove. The bronze resists you, streaking like it's angry about being touched. You mutter to it. It's become a habit, talking to the tower, the fire, the tools. There's no one else around most of the time, and silence becomes too loud after a while. The flame makes a comforting crackle as it feeds, and you imagine, for a moment, that it's purring. It's not, of course. You're just tired. You haven't had a full night's sleep in weeks, thanks to shift changes that only exist in theory. Technically, someone else is supposed to take over at dawn, but often that person arrives late, still chewing his breakfast or carrying a hangover like a laurel wreath. You don't complain anymore. You just keep the fire burning. That's the job. Historians still argue how these lighthouses were manned, whether they were military outposts, staffed by trained engineers, or if they were the domain of low-status public slaves or conscripted locals. You suspect the answer is all of the above, depending on who had pull with which magistrate. You were appointed because your cousin works in the Port Authority. Nepotism, yes, but you're not exactly grateful. You thought it would be easy. Stand around, admire the view, wave at ships. No one mentioned the heat, the danger, or the sheer boredom. You turned to the oil stores, checking your inventory. Amphorae lined up against the far wall, their wax-sealed lids keeping out moisture and insects. You make a mental note to requisition more wicks soon. The ones you have are getting short and starting to fray. There's a ledger you're supposed to fill out. Daily entries noting how much oil you used, the condition of the flame, any incidents. You've seen older entries with doodles in the margins. Ships, animals, rude caricatures of Roman officials. You add your own flourish, a tiny drawing of yourself, looking tired and leaning on an amphora. It's the little things. Outside, the wind moans through the stone gaps. You check the vents again, adjusting the wooden slats to minimize the drafts. They creak like old bones as you move them, and one resists entirely, stuck in place. From salt buildup. You'll need to hammer it loose later when the flame's low. For now, you focus on airflow. Too much wind, and the flame gutters. Too little, and smoke fills the chamber, choking you like a bad toga party. You lift your lantern and step to the parapet, leaning over the edge to scan the sea. It's black, speckled with faint glimmers, reflections of stars or distant fires on ships. You hold your mirror steady, catching the tower flame and directing it outward. You can't tell if it's reaching anyone. You just do your best. You always do your best. You think about the stories told by older keepers, legends of ships guided safely through storms by a single pinpoint of light, of sailors who left offerings at the tower base in thanks, of times when the fire went out and no one ever found the wreckage. You wonder how much is truth and how much is salt fog fantasy. There's a debate among scholars, too, about whether the flame ever burned continuously. Some say yes, that it was a symbol of eternal vigilance. Others insist it must have gone out regularly due to weather, supply shortages, or simple human error. You know the truth, because you live it. Some nights, no matter what you do, the flame dies. A sudden gust, a clogged wick, a bad batch of oil. You relight it quickly and pray no one noticed. But you always notice. You feel it like a skipped heartbeat. Down below, the sea hisses again, louder this time. You strain your ears, trying to parse the sound. Waves? Wind? Or something more urgent? A ship too close, maybe? You step back inside and check the fire again, frowning. The glow seems a little dimmer. You adjust the wick upward and feel a small whoosh of flame in response. Better. You sit for a moment on the low stone bench built into the wall, letting your legs rest. Your tunic sticks to your back. You sip from a water skin, grimacing at the warm, slightly briny taste. It's water, at least. The last guy left pickled fish juice in the wrong jug. That was a memorable night. A gull screams overhead, its cry echoing strangely down the chimney shaft. You glance up instinctively. The opening is supposed to be netted, but the net's torn. You'll fix it tomorrow. Maybe, if it doesn't rain. For now, you lean back, watch the fire sway and shimmer, and try to remember the last time you felt warm without sweating. The flame's steady now. You did that. You kept it alive. And you'll keep doing it, hour after hour, until someone climbs the stairs and tells you it's dawn, or until the stars fade and the horizon blushes pink, whichever comes first. Either way, you'll still be here, tending the beacon, lighting the path, one wick at a time. The wind never really stops on the headland, not even in summer, not even when the gods are allegedly smiling down on the coast. It rushes in from the sea in restless fits and starts, sometimes a low whisper that slips through the stone seams of the lighthouse, other times a howling scream that threatens to tip the whole tower into the frothing waves below. Tonight, it's somewhere in between, a constant pressure, like the world exhaling directly against your face. You stand by the narrow opening just below the beacon dome, where a small vent was carved into the masonry generations ago, presumably to allow airflow or, more likely, as a joke by some architect who thought chimney drafts made buildings more noble. You pull your outer robe tighter against your chest, though the fabric does little against the damp chill. Your skin, perpetually kissed by salt and soot, feels leathery and raw, and your ears are starting to ring from the pressure shifts. At this altitude, above the clustered rooftops of the harbor town and the bobbing silhouettes of anchored vessels, you get a different kind of silence, one that's alive with movement. The sound of the wind carries voices, sometimes real, sometimes imagined. You swear you hear singing on occasion, although it's usually just sailors shouting from distant decks or the eerie wail of the breeze slipping through gaps in the parapet stone. The oil lamp behind you flutters slightly, the flames within the beacon reacting to some unseen shift in the draft pattern, and you hurry to adjust the wick height before the light dims too much. One of the quirks of your post, one of many, is this endless battle with the wind. Roman engineers may have conquered aqueducts and arenas, but they never quite figured out how to make a lighthouse that didn't breathe like a living thing. The tower seems to inhale the cold and exhale puffs of smoke into your face, no matter which way you stand. You tried to patch one of the wall vents with old linen once, thinking you were clever, but the resulting smoke buildup nearly blinded you and turned the beacon chamber into something resembling Vulcan's forge. Lesson learned. The best you can do now is adjust the flame's position subtly, turning the brazier slightly, or altering the angle of the mirror frame so the fire reflects outward despite the sideways gusts. You have 2 polished discs in play tonight, bronze mirrors about the size of your head, both fitted onto awkward pivot arms that creak when moved. One of them developed a strange greenish patina over the last week, which you haven't had time to polish off. The other is newer, shinier, and vastly more cooperative. You tilt it outward now, hoping the light reaches as far as the reef just past the harbor mouth. Sailors say that reef eats more ships than a Carthaginian blockade, and they're not entirely wrong. You've seen your share of wreckage wash ashore after nights when the fog rolls in too thick, or the wind redirects your flame into the back wall. One merchant trireme lost half its cargo to the rocks last season. Hundreds of amphorae shattered like eggs, spilling their contents into the waves. You heard the smell of spoiled garum sauce lingered for days. As the wind picks up again, stronger now, more insistent, you hear a clatter behind you and whip around. One of your oil pots has tipped over, fortunately still sealed, but it's rolled halfway across the chamber floor. You retrieve it and place it in the nook between 2 storage bins, using a chunk of broken pottery as a wedge. Everything up here is in danger of moving if not nailed down. You once lost a full basket of rags to the wind. It soared out the tower's upper vents like a bizarre offering to Neptune. Sometimes, you wonder if the sea god collects your mistakes and adds them to some underwater museum of failed lighthouse shifts. Scholars still debate whether these early Roman lighthouse designs were ever truly meant for consistent, long-term operation in conditions like this. Some argue the towers were more symbolic than practical, more for show than utility. a grand gesture to Rome's control of the seas. Others say no, they were functional marvels, with systems and staff as disciplined as any legion. You know the truth is muddier than either camp admits. These towers can work, with enough fuel and stubbornness and someone like you willing to spend hours negotiating with the elements. But they're flawed, charming in the way a grumpy cat is charming, unpredictable, temperamental, occasionally dangerous. You pause to drink from your flask, the water inside tepid but refreshing. Your throat's dry from the smoke again, and your nose tingles from the soot in the air. Even with vents open and damp cloths hung along the walls to absorb the worst of the residue, the air in the beacon chamber is always slightly toxic. You once read, or maybe overheard, that prolonged exposure to oil smoke can make your teeth fall out. That might explain your molar trouble. Then again, so might the hard candied figs you chew during long watches. You take another cautious step toward the parapet, steadying yourself against a pillar as the wind gusts again. A loose shingle on the dome rattles ominously. You make a mental note to report it, though you know no one will fix it until it actually flies off and hits someone. That's the rule around here: reactive maintenance, not preventative. It's why the floor creaks, why the hinges shriek, and why you once had to prop up a broken beam with a stack of crates labeled ceremonial wine, do not touch. You touched, obviously. You've had to improvise a lot up here. There's no manual for this job, just whispered advice from whoever worked the shift before you. Some told you to count the waves to stay awake. Others recommended scratching tally marks into the mortar or naming the stars above the harbor. One guy swore by yelling his own name every 15 minutes. You tried it. It just scared the gulls. The wind now changes direction slightly, coming from the northwest instead of the open sea. You feel it in the way your hair lifts and the edge of your robe flaps toward your knees. You hurry to shift the beacon's angle again, mindful of the ships returning from Hispania around this hour. Their captains rely on your flame. At least you like to think they do. Sometimes, they probably don't even notice. There are cloudy nights when your light must look no brighter than a glowworm in a wine bottle. But still, you tend it. Because if you didn't, and something went wrong, you'd know. You'd carry it. That one time, months ago, when the wind blew in sideways and snuffed the brazier while you were downstairs fetching a tool, no one blamed you, but you still hear the crunch of wreckage on the reef. A grain ship, they said. Nothing major, but you haven't forgotten. You dream of it sometimes. The sea swallowing timbers, the shriek of rigging under strain, the soft thud of barrels bursting. You shake yourself back to the present, the flames holding, and your hands are steady. For now. You glance out over the horizon. There, a faint light blinks back. A ship, signaling, maybe. Or another lighthouse further along the coast. You hope it's someone else up there tonight, battling their own wind demons, cursing their own crumbling masonry. You raise your polished disc slightly, catching the firelight and bouncing it outward, just in case they're looking for a reply. You wonder if they do the same. If there's some kind of ancient camaraderie in this lonely work, a network of unseen keepers linked by flickers and reflections and mutual backache. The wind howls again, stronger this time, and the dome lets out a groan like an old man rising from a bath. You brace yourself against the brazier, feeling the tower sway ever so slightly. Not enough to panic, just enough to remind you that this whole job is perched on the edge of something larger, more unpredictable. The sea is patient, always pushing, always testing. And tonight, like every night, you push back, with oil, with flame, with mirrors, and muttered curses. The wind doesn't care, of course, but you do. And that makes all the difference. The wind is quieter for now, but you've learned not to trust its silence. It's the same sort of uneasy calm that comes before trouble, a trick of the night air, like a coin spun high into the dark, hovering in stillness just before falling. You step away from the parapet and move back toward the center of the flame chamber. passing the bronze discs again, your hand briefly brushing their cool surface. You remember the first time someone told you about the signaling code. You thought they were joking. But no, sometime back, a clever commander or board official devised a rudimentary system of communication using the beacon's light. A pattern of movements, pauses, and directional shifts in the reflection was meant to send simple messages to ships or neighboring towers. It's not Morse code, that hasn't been invented yet, but it's a start. You still have the wax tablet with the basic key scratched into it, although most of the messages are laughably limited. Safe harbor, storm approaching, enemy spotted, and weirdly, wine shortage. The last one may have been added by a prankster, but you've used it twice. What makes the system so complicated is how subtle it is. You have to physically rotate the mirror arms, hold a shield in front of the flame, or use tinted panes, green or red glass slipped into a rusty iron frame, though the panes are rarely clean and often crack in the heat. Tonight you're trying to send a simple pulse, 2 short blocks of light followed by a long one. That should say calm seas, or maybe angry cow. You're never quite sure. The pattern of signaling light flickers awkwardly across the harbor and toward the distant shoreline, bouncing off the gentle mist that now creeps along the water like a cautious intruder. You watch for a moment, hoping someone on the far end is looking back. You like to imagine some other keeper across the bay mirroring your gestures, just to prove the world still contains other fools who chose this job. Historians still debate how widespread or effective these signaling systems really were. Some argue they were experimental, abandoned quickly once they proved unreliable in heavy weather. Others believe they were integral to coastal defenses, especially in the later days of the Empire when pirates and barbarian raiders grew more common. There's no consensus. You only know that sometimes, when the fog parts and the wind lies down, your flickers are answered. Not always, but enough. You like to think of it as a lonely form of friendship, distant and flickering, like everything else in this job. You lean into the work, adjusting the plates again, straining your arm to hold the heavy disc just a fraction higher. The reflected light twitches as it moves, quivering across the dark like a firefly losing its nerve. You wonder what it actually looks like from the water. To you, it's just light behaving badly. To someone out at sea, maybe it's a promise, a target, a hope. The colored panes you use to adjust the signal's hue are kept in a wooden box lined with sand, but most of them are cracked, as if the glass is trying to escape its job. You select the reddish one and slot it in with practiced care. The glow turns orange, then a sort of murky rust. Not ideal, but it'll do. You flash the pattern again, slower this time, in case anyone missed it. There's no real feedback loop. You don't get applause. You don't even know if you've been understood. It's like shouting across a canyon and hoping the echo comes back in a different language. After the third pass, you stop and peer into the dark. For a moment, there's nothing. Then, across the bay, a shimmer of light shifts. Once, twice. A reply? Or just a trick of the eyes? You blink rapidly, rubbing soot from your lashes. The smoke here makes everything blur eventually. Still, you decide it counts. You allow yourself a small grin. It's not exactly diplomacy, but it's something. You return the glass pane to its crate, careful not to let the edge bite into your fingers. You've got old scars from when one shattered unexpectedly last year. The edge caught your thumb so cleanly you didn't notice until you started dripping on the oil jars. That was a bad night. And yes, the flame went out briefly. You told no one. Back then, you didn't know how to use the backup lamp properly. Now, you keep 3 spares lit in different corners, their flames low but constant, so if the main fire fails, you have insurance. That's something no one tells you. Your real job isn't tending a flame. It's guarding against failure. Every trick, every habit, every strange invention you use, mirrors, signals, spare wicks, damp cloths hung to catch sparks, they're all defenses against the moment when something goes wrong. Because something will go wrong. It always does. And the sea, for all its calm tonight, is not a forgiving teacher. You stand again, stretching your back until it pops. Your spine complains like a chorus of old men in a bathhouse. You rotate your shoulders and feel the stiffness settle deeper. There's no escaping it. This work changes your posture, your walk, even the way you sleep. You've developed a sixth sense for the smell of burning linen and the sound of creaking timber under strain. It's not glamorous, but it's real. You wonder sometimes what the average citizen thinks a lighthouse keeper does. Do they picture you reclining by the flame, sipping wine and composing poetry? Or do they imagine you as some ghostly figure in a hood, eternally pacing like a temple priest? The reality is neither. You're a technician, a custodian, a janitor, a weatherman, a reluctant acrobat, and occasionally a performer of impromptu rituals when the brazier gets temperamental. One keeper before you used to swear by dancing around the flame chamber 3 times counterclockwise when relighting the fire. You tried it once. It worked. That's enough to make it part of your unofficial toolkit now. Superstition isn't logical, but in the middle of the night, when you're alone with smoke and salt and shifting shadows, logic doesn't warm your fingers. Ritual does. You glance back at your wax tablet, checking to see if you've made your required notations for the hour. You scratch in the date, the flame height, the wind direction, and whether you attempted a signal. No one ever reads these notes, probably, but they'll be stored somewhere in the archives, maybe rediscovered in a few centuries and misinterpreted as some kind of encoded poetry. Flicker, pause, flicker. Orange light. Calm sea. Sounds philosophical if you squint. You add a final line. Possible reply. Then you set the tablet down and begin your next circuit of the flame chamber. You check the support beams, feel the warmth of the brazier with the back of your hand, and sniff the air for signs of smoke buildup. You reach for the wick rod and make a tiny adjustment. The flame flares slightly, then calms. Good. Your eyes drift back to the distant shore. The reply light is gone now, or at least hidden behind the rising mist. But you remember it. It was there. A blink in the dark. Proof you're not the only one awake tonight. You aren't alone in the tower, though it often feels that way, especially in the dead of night, when the flame hisses quietly and your own breath sounds louder than the wind outside. But you're not alone. Not really. The night has its own population, and you've become painfully familiar with every member. The bats arrive first, usually just after dusk, fluttering in through some unseen gap in the ventilation shaft, their papery wings whispering like old scrolls as they loop around the rafters, then vanish again as if bored with your company. They don't bother you much, except when one gets too close and skims the edge of your ear, causing you to flinch so hard you nearly drop the oil jug you've been carefully balancing. You try not to take it personally. The bats probably think the lighthouse belongs to them. Then there are the moths, huge lumbering things the size of your palm, drawn to the flame with all the suicidal passion of poets. They flap against the mirror plates and fall into the fire, sizzling like wet parchment, leaving behind a scent you can only describe as toasted sorrow. You've taken to muttering warnings to them when they get too close. "Don't do it," you whisper. "You'll regret it." But they never listen. Nobody listens to the lighthouse keeper. Next come the owls. One in particular, white-faced and judgmental, has made your tower part of its nightly hunting route. You hear its wings before you see it, a low glide that stirs the dust near your feet, and then it perches on the edge of the open parapet, staring at you like you owe it money. You named it Octavia. Octavia doesn't seem impressed. She watches you trim the wick with one eye half closed, then turns and vanishes into the dark. You envy her freedom. You don't have wings, just sandals and sore arches and a robe that never quite fits right across the shoulders. Sometimes, late in the shift, the shadows start to move differently, and that's when the real trouble begins. It always starts with a rustling near the storage bins. You tell yourself it's just the wind or the settling of the stone blocks, but you know better. The rat is back. He has no name, because naming him would imply friendship, and you are not friends. You are rivals. He appears only when you're most exhausted, when your eyes are blurry from staring at the flame, and your legs ache from climbing the stairs too many times. You'll hear the faint clatter of something small being knocked over, and then you'll catch a glimpse of a twitching tail or gleaming eyes. Once, you found your ration of salted almonds gnawed open and rearranged into what looked suspiciously like a tiny spiral, as though the rat were mocking your daily routine. Another time, he absconded with the end of a wick, dragging it down between two floor stones where you couldn't reach. You've tried everything: traps, cloth bundles laced with vinegar, even a ridiculous attempt involving a flute and a makeshift basket, but nothing deters him. He's clever, fast, and unbothered by your authority. One night you swear he saluted you with a piece of cheese before scampering away. Then there's the lizard. Small, silent, and entirely indifferent to your presence. It lives behind the mirror stand and emerges only to bask in the heat from the beacon's base. You've never seen it move quickly. It appears, stares, warms itself, and retreats. You suspect it might be a reincarnated philosopher. You once tried to talk to it. "You think I'm wasting my life?" you asked. It blinked slowly and walked away. Not helpful. Even the insects have personalities here. There's a particular type of beetle that thuds against the walls like a tossed coin, bouncing off stone and mirror alike with an almost cheerful clumsiness. You've learned not to kill them. Not because you're kind, but because they smell terrible when squashed. And you really don't need another thing adding to the already chaotic scent profile of this place. Smoke, oil, sweat, salt, bat guano, toasted moth, and despair. The worst night creatures, though, are the ones you can't quite prove exist. The ones that come when you're at your lowest, half asleep, sitting cross-legged by the wall, head nodding toward your chest. You'll feel a shift in the air, a shadow passing where there should be none. You'll hear a breath that isn't yours, a creak that doesn't match the rhythm of the wind. You'll stand, suddenly alert, heart hammering, only to find nothing. Nothing at all. Just the flame and the wind and your own reflection in the bronze mirror, distorted and flickering like a stranger. You try not to think about it too much. Roman superstition runs deep. Everyone in the port has stories about ghosts, omens, sea spirits that climb the rocks and peek into the lighthouse. You dismiss most of it, but there are nights when you'd swear the tower is listening, that it remembers. There's graffiti etched into the lower walls, old markings left by previous keepers. Some are prayers. Some are crude jokes. One is just a tally of days, scratched over and over until the stone began to flake. You added your own mark once, a circle with 3 dots, a symbol you invented to mean still alive. You carve a fresh one every week. You don't know why. Maybe you hope someone will see them one day and understand that this work wasn't just light and oil and long hours. It was you, surviving. And so you continue. You adjust the flame. You polish the mirror. You swat at the moths, and you glare into the shadows where the rat waits for your moment of weakness. You hum under your breath to keep yourself awake, snatches of tavern songs, old nursery rhymes, one particularly annoying jingle from a fishmonger's stall that's been stuck in your head since the Festival of Neptune 3 months ago. The animals don't seem to mind. Octavia occasionally cocks her head in approval. The lizard is unbothered. The rat, you suspect, might be dancing just out of sight. You once joked to yourself that if the empire ever collapsed, the lighthouses would still stand, lit by tired keepers who didn't get the memo. It doesn't seem so far-fetched now. The fire doesn't care about politics. The flame needs tending no matter who's wearing the laurel crown in Rome. Emperor or no emperor, ships need guiding, sailors need hope, and some unlucky soul has to deal with nocturnal wildlife while doing it. That unlucky soul, for tonight, is you. And as the night creatures return to their haunts, and the wind picks up again in mournful gusts, you sit quietly by the flame, watching the shadows, listening to the skittering beneath the floorboards, and telling yourself that dawn will come, eventually. The slow creep of dawn feels like a distant promise rather than a certainty. You know that as the light edges closer, the weight of your solitude will shift. But for now, the darkness still rules the tower. You move carefully along the worn stone floor. The oil lamp's glow casting long, twitching shadows on the walls that seem to stretch and pull like ancient ghosts reaching for you. The chill of the night air seeps in through every crack, tugging at your skin beneath layers of wool and linen, and you tug your robe tighter, hands rough and cracked from hours of tending the fire and hauling oil jugs. Your body aches in a way that feels like a badge of honor, proof that you've earned each step, each breath. You cross the chamber, checking the oil reserves, and find yourself counting the amphorae lined up in neat rows along the back wall. 12 left, maybe 13. Enough to last until your relief arrives, provided the flame doesn't burn faster than usual. You never quite trust the measurements. Once, a bad batch of oil almost snuffed out the beacon, and you had to scramble to light the backup lamps before the harbor grew completely dark. The thought still makes your palms sweat. The oil is your lifeblood here. It feeds the flame, yes, but it's also your safety net, your connection to the world beyond this lonely tower. You pour some into a small dish, testing its viscosity and scent, and breathe in the pungent olive undertones. It's not perfume, but it's something. You wipe your hands on your robe and move back toward the brazier, where the fire dances restlessly, chasing the wind that blows through the tower's vents and cracks. You adjust the wick, coaxing the flame to a steady glow, a little more yellow now, less flickering. It's the kind of light that reaches far, or at least far enough to keep the sailors safe. You've grown superstitious about the flame's color, convinced that a certain shade of orange means calm seas, while a pale blue signals a storm. Of course, no one else believes you, but it helps pass the hours. Outside, the sea continues its restless song, waves lapping against the rocky coast with a rhythm that matches your pulse. You step to the parapet and peer out over the water, searching for any sign of life. Faint outlines of ships drift on the horizon, their sails ghostly shapes against the black. You imagine the sailors below, curled in hammocks or bracing against the chill, looking for your light to guide them home. Sometimes you think they know you're here, up in this tower, fighting the cold and the wind to keep the beacon alive. Other times you're convinced you're invisible, just another shadow swallowed by the night. You watch a distant flicker, another lighthouse or perhaps a ship's lantern, and feel a brief spark of camaraderie. The world feels a little less lonely then. Your thoughts drift to the stories you've heard about the ancient lighthouse at Alexandria, that colossal wonder of the world that inspired so many Roman towers. Built by Sostratus of Cnidus, it stood for centuries, a shining beacon on the edge of civilization. It's said that the Alexandrian lighthouse could be seen from over 30 miles away, its fire magnified by huge polished bronze mirrors, much like the ones you tend here. You wonder what it would have been like to work there, under the gaze of the pharaohs, surrounded by the bustle of one of the largest ports in the ancient world. It must have been something spectacular. Of course, the Roman towers are smaller, less glamorous. You joke to yourself that if the Alexandrian lighthouse was a royal palace, then this is a cramped apartment with a leaky roof. Yet, the spirit is the same, holding a light against the darkness, a promise that even in the wildest storms, there's a way forward. Historians still argue whether these lighthouses were primarily military installations or commercial necessities. Some suggest that they were fortresses in disguise, towers manned by soldiers ready to signal warnings of approaching enemies or pirates. Others believe they were humble civic tools, designed to protect merchants and sailors rather than defend empires. The truth is probably somewhere in between. You've heard tales of lookout posts being quickly converted into defensive positions during times of unrest, with keepers doubling as guards. It's a thought that sends a shiver down your spine, especially when the wind picks up and howls like a pack of wolves. For now, though, you focus on your immediate task. The flame must burn, the oil must flow, and the mirrors must shine. You sweep a hand across the bronze plates, clearing away soot and smudges, watching the light dance on their surfaces. The work is repetitive, monotonous, but it carries a rhythm that lulls you into a kind of trance. Your fingers know the movements without your mind having to think. Adjust the wick, tilt the mirror, check the oil, repeat. You savor the small victories, a flame that holds steady through a gust, a signal that flickers out to sea, a mirror polished just enough to catch a stray beam. These moments keep you tethered to the world. And then there's the unexpected. A sudden knock at the door, which makes you jump every time, even though you know no one should be there. The arrival of a message carried by a courier, wrapped carefully in oilskin and left at the tower's base. A stray cat that sneaks in and curls up in a corner, purring away the chill. Small things that break the isolation, remind you you're part of a larger story. Sometimes you dream of the future, the day when the flame might be replaced by some clever machine, a mechanism that burns clean and steady without the fuss and danger. You imagine stepping down from the tower, the weight lifted from your shoulders, and walking freely through the port, your hands unsuited, your lungs clear of smoke. But then you realize you'd miss it. The smell of oil, the crackle of fire, the challenge of fighting the wind and the night. You are, in some strange way, bound to this duty. A keeper of the light, a guardian against darkness. You turn back inside as the first pink streaks of dawn begin to lighten the sky. The flame's glow softens but does not die. There is still work to do, more watches ahead. But for a moment, the world feels less heavy. You breathe deeply, savoring the scent of salt and smoke, and prepare to face the last hours of the night, knowing that soon, very soon, you'll be relieved. Until then, you keep the flame alive. The scent of the sea is stronger now, mixed with the faint aroma of burning oil and smoldering wood. You can feel the salty breeze slipping past the cracked stones of the tower, wrapping around your body like an old, familiar cloak. You lean against the cold wall for a moment, savoring the quiet hum of the morning. Ships stirring in the harbor, gulls calling above, the distant clang of the market opening. But in here, inside the lighthouse, it's a different world entirely. Time moves slower, stretched thin across endless hours of vigilance and routine. You take stock of the tools scattered around your feet, the polished bronze mirrors with their faint patina, the twisted iron tongs used to adjust the wick, the wooden crates filled with oily rags and spare wick threads, and the small battered chest holding the precious oil amphora. Each piece tells a story, a testament to the lives of keepers who came before you, hands worn from labor, eyes bleary from smoke. You catch yourself imagining those earlier nights, when the tower was first lit, and a brave soul climbed those narrow stairs for the first time, carrying the fire that would become a symbol of safety for countless sailors. The tower must have seemed like a beacon of hope then, a giant standing against the endless darkness and fury of the sea. Historians still debate whether the Romans borrowed the lighthouse concept directly from the Egyptians, Greeks, or developed it independently. What's clear is that the Romans took the idea seriously, building sturdy towers along critical stretches of coastline, incorporating the latest engineering advances to improve visibility and durability. Some towers were simple, just a stone platform with a brazier on top, while others were elaborate multi-level structures with mirror systems to amplify the flame's reach. Your tower falls somewhere in the middle. It's not the grandest, but it's reliable, if a bit drafty and prone to creaks and groans when the wind picks up. You step carefully over a loose flagstone and make your way to the narrow slit windows, their edges worn smooth from centuries of salt spray and storms. Through the glassless openings, you scan the horizon, watching for any signs of ships or weather changes. The sea is deceptively calm tonight, but you know better than to trust it completely. A sudden storm can whip up in minutes, swallowing vessels whole and turning even the strongest lighthouse into a trembling sentinel. The ancient mariners relied on you to keep that from happening, to hold the light steady and bright, to guide their way through the night's dangers. The responsibility weighs heavily on your shoulders. You glance back at the flame. It flickers, but holds firm, fed by the steady drip of oil into the brazier below. The smoke curls upward in lazy spirals, casting dancing shadows across the stone walls. You pause to breathe it in, smoky, sharp, oddly comforting. It smells like history, like sacrifice. You adjust the flame height again, a subtle dance you've mastered through trial and error. Too low, and the light won't reach the farthest ships. Too high, and the flame sputters and risks going out entirely. You've learned to listen to the fire's voice, its flickers, its crackles, like a patient friend whispering secrets in the dark. Occasionally, your thoughts drift to the stories told about the Lighthouse of Alexandria, said to be visible for miles and guarded by mythic creatures. Some even whispered that it held a flame fueled by magic or the breath of dragons. While you know those tales are fanciful, the idea that a flame could hold such power, both practical and symbolic, resonates deeply. You imagine the sailors who once depended on that mighty beacon, how the light must have steadied their nerves amid tumultuous seas. There's a strange beauty in that shared vulnerability, a connection across time and space. You wonder whether your own humble tower will be remembered in stories, or if it will fade into obscurity like so many others. The mirrors beside you catch the light, their polished surfaces gleaming faintly in the gloom. You run your fingers over the bronze, feeling the tiny imperfections left by centuries of use, scratches, dents, and spots of verdigris that give them character. You recall a curious fact you read recently. The Romans often coated their mirrors with a thin layer of gold leaf to enhance reflectivity, though this practice was expensive and rare. Your own mirrors are simple bronze, but they do the job. You smile at the thought of the lighthouse keepers who might have to polish these plates daily, their faces streaked with soot, their hands blackened and raw. You are one of them now. The mirrors need to be angled precisely, a subtle tilt that catches the flame and throws its glow far across the dark waters. It's a delicate balance, and you know from experience that even the smallest misalignment can send the light astray. You make minor adjustments, watching the flame's reflection dance across the stone floor and out the windows, where it vanishes into the night. Behind you, the oil jars sit silent but vigilant, their heavy clay forms stained by years of spills and drips. You reach for a small brush and carefully wipe away dust and soot from one of the jars, revealing a faded inscription that you can't quite decipher. It's probably a maker's mark or a prayer for safe passage. You like to think it's the latter. As you continue your work, you hear a faint creak from the tower's wooden staircase, a reminder that time wears on the structure as much as the sea does. Maintenance is a never-ending task, one that often falls to the keeper. You've patched cracks with mortar and replaced broken steps with whatever scraps of wood you could find. The tower is old, stubborn, and sometimes seems to have a personality of its own, complaining in groans and whispers when the wind blows just right. Tonight, the tower is calm, but you remain vigilant. Your eyes drift back to the horizon, where the first hints of dawn are beginning to stain the sky in soft blues and pinks. The sea calms, the wind softens, and a sense of peace settles over the lighthouse. But your work isn't done. Soon, the relief keeper will arrive, and you'll pass the torch, quite literally. But until then, you hold the line. You are the keeper of the flame, the guardian of the night, the unseen hand guiding vessels safely to shore. And though the job is lonely, exhausting, and filled with small frustrations, it carries a quiet dignity that you wouldn't trade for anything. For in this light, in this vigil, there is hope, connection, and the enduring spirit of those who refuse to let darkness win. The sea's voice grows louder as you peer out once more, waves slapping against the jagged rocks beneath the tower with an insistent rhythm, like nature's own heartbeat. The salt air stings your nostrils, carrying the faint tang of seaweed and something darker. Old ship timbers rotting just beyond the surf. You breathe it in deeply, feeling the cool moisture settle on your skin beneath your layers. Your eyes scan the horizon again, noting how the darkness is slowly surrendering to the pale touch of dawn. The sky begins to soften, shifting from inky black to deep indigo, and then to a soft violet, as if the sun itself is stretching after a long night. There's a stillness in these moments, a fragile calm before the day fully takes hold. Inside the tower, the flickering flame steadies into a golden glow, reflecting off the bronze mirrors with an almost hypnotic quality. You adjust their angle slightly, coaxing the light to reach just a bit farther out to sea, hoping it will catch the attention of any late-night sailors lingering near the rocky reefs. You think back to the early days of these lighthouses, how the Romans learned from their Greek and Egyptian predecessors the crucial importance of guiding ships safely through treacherous waters. The earliest designs were simple, just fires on hilltops, but the Romans, with their flair for engineering, sought to improve upon the idea with durable stone towers and innovative reflective surfaces. Historians still argue whether the invention of polished bronze mirrors was a practical breakthrough or a symbolic gesture to emphasize Rome's dominion over the seas. For you, the mirrors are nothing short of miraculous. They amplify a small flame into a far-reaching beacon, a fragile thread of light cutting through darkness and mist. You polish one of the discs gently, watching the glow catch on its smooth surface. The craftsmanship involved is astonishing, especially considering the tools available centuries ago. As your fingers trace the subtle dents and scratches, you imagine the artisans who forged these mirrors, their sweat and skill embedded in the metal. The flame beside you is alive, a flickering, breathing presence. You tend it carefully, knowing that a single misstep could snuff it out and plunge the harbor into peril. You recall a tale from a fellow keeper who once had to light the beacon by scraping flint in a storm, his hands raw and bleeding as waves crashed against the tower's base. The story always lingers in your mind on nights like this, a reminder that the flame is more than just light. It's survival. You shift your weight and glance toward the narrow stairwell, where the footsteps of the relief keeper will soon echo. The arrival will bring a brief respite, a chance to leave this stone cage and stretch your limbs in the fresh morning air. Until then, you remain vigilant, eyes flicking between the flame, the mirrors, and the horizon. The wind picks up again, a soft howl that slips through the tower's cracks and dances along your skin. You tuck your robe tighter, feeling the chill bite into your bones despite the fire. It's a reminder of the harsh environment you endure, perched on this cliff like a sentinel carved from stone. The tower groans beneath the gusts, sending vibrations up through the floorboards and into your feet. You imagine the years of storms it has weathered, the countless nights of light and shadow, fire and wind. It feels ancient and alive all at once, a living monument to endurance. You take a slow breath, savoring the salty air mixed with the scent of smoke and your own sweat. You realize that, despite the hardships, you wouldn't trade this existence for anything. There's a strange peace in the rhythm of the night watch, the repetitive tasks, the dance with the flame, the communion with the elements. You think of the sailors who rely on your light, navigating the dark waters back to safe harbor. Their lives, their hopes, their fears, all tied to this fragile glow. You wonder if they ever think of you, hidden away in this tower, fighting the cold and the wind and the relentless passage of time. The thought brings a faint smile to your lips. You adjust the flame one last time before settling down on a stone bench, your body aching but your mind alert. Outside, the sky lightens further, and the first bird calls pierce the quiet. The night is ending, but your vigil continues. The sea, the wind, and the flame, they are your companions, constant and unyielding. You close your eyes briefly, letting the weariness wash over you, knowing that soon the relief keeper will arrive and you'll be free to rest. But for now, you are the keeper of the light, standing guard between darkness and dawn. You stand at the edge of the parapet once again, the rough-hewn stones cool beneath your hands as the sea breeze wraps around you with a salty chill. The dawn is still hours away, but the sky is gradually shedding its ink-black cloak, turning first to navy blue and then into a deeper shade of gray that promises the coming of light. You gaze out over the restless ocean, watching the waves roll and break against the jagged rocks below with a constant, hypnotic rhythm, the sound a low, soothing roar that seems to drown out everything else. It's a sound you've come to know intimately, as if it pulses in time with your own heartbeat. The harbor lies just beyond the rocky coast, dotted here and there with the faint glimmers of ship lanterns still lit against the early morning gloom. You wonder where they're headed, perhaps returning from a long voyage or setting out on a new adventure, though you'll never know for certain. Your duty tonight has been to keep the flame burning steady, a lonely but vital task that carries the lives of many in its flickering glow. The fire's light cuts through the darkness like a beacon of hope, a warning, and a guide all at once. You bend forward to inspect the brazier again, adjusting the wick carefully with the long iron tongs to keep the flame steady, resisting the temptation to let it flare too high and risk sputtering out in a sudden gust of wind. The flame's color is an ever-changing dance, sometimes a deep orange, other times a pale yellow. But tonight, it holds a warm, golden hue that you take as a good omen. You remember learning, long ago, from an old keeper who swore by the flame's color as an omen of weather to come, though you're not quite sure if it's superstition or science. The oil that feeds the fire, thick and pungent with the scent of pressed olives, flows steadily, its gentle drip the heartbeat of your night. You consider how many hours you've spent tending this flame, fingers blackened from soot and skin cracked from the harsh salt air, your body aching from the climb up the tower's spiral stairs and the long vigil spent pacing its cramped chambers. The monotony of the task is strangely meditative, the endless repetition of lighting, cleaning, adjusting, and recording each small detail in your ledger, which you tuck carefully away in your robes for safekeeping. It's these small rituals, these tiny fragments of order in the chaos of the night that keep you grounded and awake. You glance around the tower's interior, the flickering shadows playing tricks on the worn stone walls, revealing cracks and faint carvings left by keepers long past. You imagine their hands, rough and steady, performing the same tasks, living the same isolation, generations ago. It's humbling to think of yourself as a link in this long chain, a small but essential part of a vast network spanning the empire's coasts. You reach out to polish one of the bronze mirrors beside the flame, the metal cool and heavy under your fingertips. The mirrors are the heart of your work. Without them, the fire's light would scatter uselessly, lost in the night. You carefully adjust the angle of the largest mirror, watching as the reflected flame's glow extends farther across the water, a ribbon of gold cutting through the fog that gathers low over the harbor. The engineering behind these mirrors is an impressive feat, considering the limitations of the age, each piece hammered and shaped by skilled hands, polished to catch every stray spark of light and send it onward like a beacon of safety. You think about the stories you've heard of the ancient pharaohs of Alexandria, the legendary lighthouse that inspired your own tower. That monument, said to be visible from miles away, was a marvel of the ancient world, standing as a symbol of the unity between man, nature, and technology. You imagine the countless sailors who relied on its glow to navigate treacherous waters and think about how your own flame carries that same legacy, small but no less important. There's a strange comfort in the thought that across the centuries, others have stood where you stand, holding the light against the dark, their lives entwined with the flickering fire. Outside, the weather shifts subtly. The wind picks up, sending a chill through the narrow openings of the tower and ruffling your cloak. You pause to listen, catching the distant crash of waves against the cliffs, the cry of seabirds awakening for the day. The world outside continues its rhythm, indifferent to the solitary figure guarding the flame. The night's silence has been broken only by the creaking of wood and stone settling, the occasional flurry of wings as bats make their rounds through the ventilation shafts, and the steady drip of oil into the brazier. You allow your mind to wander to the tales of superstition and folklore that have grown around lighthouses like yours, stories of ghostly keepers trapped forever in the light's glow, of sea spirits that wander the coast in search of lost sailors, and of curses laid upon those who let the flame die. You scoff quietly at some of these stories, but find yourself sharing others, especially the ones whispered by keepers during long watches to ward off loneliness. You recall the strange ritual one keeper insisted upon, dancing 3 times counterclockwise around the brazier before lighting the fire. You tried it once, half mocking, half curious, and found the flame held steadier that night. You've since added the dance to your own routine, a small charm against the cold and dark. Historians still debate the practical origins of such superstitions, whether they were born from genuine ancient rituals or mere habits born of boredom and fear. But you've come to appreciate their quiet power. They give structure to the long hours and a sense of connection to the past, even if only imagined. As the faint light of dawn begins to spread across the sky, the first hints of pink and orange bleeding into the horizon, you take one last look at the harbor. The ships now appear more clearly, their sails and hulls outlined against the growing light. The fishermen have begun to stir, readying their boats for the day's work, their calls carrying faintly on the breeze. Your relief is near. Soon, you'll descend the tower's winding steps and breathe fresh air untainted by smoke and soot. Yet, part of you hesitates to leave the flame, this quiet guardian of the night. You feel a strange bond with the light, a responsibility that transcends mere duty. It is a promise you make each night, to keep the darkness at bay, to guide the lost and weary home. As you extinguish the smaller lamps scattered around the tower, leaving the brazier to burn steadily on, you know that your work here is but a fleeting moment in the long history of lighthouses and those who keep their fires alive. But for now, it is enough. You scribble one final note in your ledger, marking the hour, the weather, and the flame's condition, then tuck it away carefully. The tower creaks again as the morning wind gathers strength, and you smile to yourself, ready to pass the watch. The light will continue to shine, a beacon against the vast night, a symbol of hope in a world of uncertainty. And as you step into the awakening world below, you carry with you the quiet pride of a keeper who has done his part. The tower groans softly as you ascend its spiraling staircase once more, each step a familiar rhythm beneath your boots, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps like yours. The stone walls press close around you, cool and damp, and the salty air clings to your skin as you push open the heavy wooden door at the top, stepping into the lantern room where the flame dances tirelessly. Your eyes adjust to the flickering light, its warm glow casting wavering shadows across the weathered brass and bronze of the mirrors and the scorched stone floor. You move carefully, your hands steady despite the exhaustion weighing on your limbs, and check the oil level in the brazier, ensuring the wick is trimmed to the perfect length to maintain a steady flame that will pierce the darkness for miles. The responsibility feels as heavy as the stones beneath your feet. The knowledge that this fragile flame is the lifeline for countless sailors navigating treacherous coasts. Outside, the night wind whistles through the tower's cracks, carrying with it the faint cries of seabirds and the distant, restless murmur of waves against jagged rocks. You glance toward the horizon, where faint silhouettes of ships drift like ghosts, their lanterns mere pinpricks against the black sea. The lighthouse is more than just stone and fire. It is a symbol of safety, of home, and of human perseverance against the vast, indifferent ocean. You think of the pharaohs of Alexandria, the grandest of all lighthouses, and wonder what it must have been like to tend a flame visible for over 30 miles, a guiding light for an empire. The Romans borrowed heavily from their predecessors, but added their own engineering genius, developing mirrors and mechanisms to enhance the light's reach, turning simple fires into powerful beacons. Historians still debate whether these advances were driven more by practical necessity or the desire to demonstrate imperial grandeur. Your own tower is humble in comparison, but no less vital. The bronze mirrors beside you gleam under your touch, their surfaces worn smooth yet resilient. You polish one carefully, watching the fire's reflection flicker and stretch, casting a golden beam that dances like a living thing. It's a delicate balance. Too much polishing risks scratching, too little dims the light. You think about the hands that made these mirrors centuries ago, their craftsmanship a blend of artistry and utility, and you feel a connection to them, a thread linking past keepers to your own watch. The task is monotonous but meditative, the repetitive movements a balm for the mind during long, lonely hours. Sometimes the wind picks up suddenly, sending chills through your bones and making the flame flicker wildly. You brace yourself, tightening your grip on the tools, ready to adjust the wick or shield the fire from the gusts. Keeping the flame alive is a constant battle, a dance with the elements and time. You recall stories passed down through generations of keepers, tales of nights when the flame nearly died, snuffed out by storms or careless mistakes, and the frantic efforts to relight it before disaster struck. There's a quiet heroism in these stories, a testament to human resilience and the stubborn refusal to surrender to darkness. Beyond the physical challenges, you are keenly aware of the psychological toll, the isolation, the endless vigil, the sense of being cut off from the world. Your companions are the flickering flame, the salty breeze, and the distant stars that watch silently overhead. Occasionally, a stray cat finds its way into the tower, a fleeting visitor whose soft purring offers comfort during the loneliest hours. You smile at the memory of last winter's cat, curled up in a corner, sharing your warmth against the biting cold. Such moments are rare but precious. The tower itself feels alive, groaning and creaking like an ancient beast, weathering storms and centuries with quiet dignity. You've patched cracks, replaced broken stones, and tended to the old wooden staircase, each repair a small act of devotion to this sentinel of the coast. Historians still argue about the social standing of lighthouse keepers, whether you were seen as mere servants or valued guardians of critical infrastructure. The truth, as you've learned, lies somewhere in between. Your life is humble but vital, a balance of duty, endurance, and solitude. You think about the practicalities of your role, rationing oil carefully, keeping logs of weather and flame conditions, maintaining equipment, and watching for ships. Every detail matters. One mistake could mean a lost vessel or a drowned crew. You breathe deeply, the mix of smoke, salt, and oil filling your lungs, a scent as familiar as home. You check your supplies, counting the remaining amphorae of oil stored beneath the tower, calculating how long they will last until the next delivery. Shipments can be delayed by storms or pirates, and shortages are a constant concern. You remind yourself of the importance of conserving resources without compromising safety. The sun's first light begins to paint the horizon in soft hues of pink and orange. The night watch is almost over. Soon the relief keeper will arrive, and you'll descend the tower to rest and replenish. But for now, you stand vigilant, the flame's steady glow a beacon against the encroaching dawn. The lighthouse is a living symbol of hope and perseverance, a light in the darkness that will outlast you and countless others. And as you gaze out over the calm sea, you feel a deep sense of purpose, knowing that your watch, your flame, and your care mean the difference between safety and peril for those who sail beyond the horizon. The wind shifts suddenly, carrying with it the sharp scent of rain and the distant rumble of thunder as you stand once again beside the steady flame. Your eyes tracing the horizon where dark clouds gather like a storm wrathful army assembling at the edge of the world. The air feels heavier now, the usual briny freshness replaced by a thick anticipation, as if the sea itself is holding its breath in preparation for the tempest to come. You tighten your grip on the iron tongs, steadying the wick against the fluctuating gusts that threaten to snuff out the fragile light. Your body tenses, muscles coiled in readiness, not just to preserve the flame, but to withstand the fury you know will follow. There's a certain poetry in these moments, a dance of endurance between the natural elements and human will. The lighthouse stands firm, its stones soaked in centuries of salt spray and storm, whispering tales of keepers who braved similar nights long before you. The flame flickers fiercely, a defiant beacon against the gathering darkness, casting shadows that leap and shiver across the cracked walls. You recall the legend of a keeper who once kept the light alive during a hurricane so violent it tore away part of the tower's parapet. His hands blistered and bleeding but unyielding, the flame a symbol of hope amid chaos. Historians still debate whether such stories are embellishments or truth wrapped in myth, but they serve as powerful reminders of the duty you carry. You adjust the mirrors carefully, angling them so that the light reaches as far as possible despite the storm's threat to visibility. The craftsmanship of these mirrors, bronze discs hammered and polished with painstaking care, remains remarkable, even after centuries of use. You run your fingers over the smallest imperfections, each telling a silent story of resilience and adaptation. As the first fat drops of rain begin to patter against the tower's roof, you secure the oil jars and fasten the shutters against the gusts. The scent of wet stone and seaweed mingles with the acrid smoke of the flame, creating an atmosphere thick with the raw power of the storm. The night outside becomes a cacophony of howling wind, crashing waves, and the steady drumming of rain. But inside, your vigil continues unbroken. Your thoughts wander to the sailors who rely on your light, navigating through these very conditions, their lives hanging on a thread of fire flickering miles away. You imagine their faces, eyes wide with fear or relief, hands gripping ropes slick with seawater, as they steer their vessels through treacherous waters, guided by your steadfast beacon. The responsibility humbles you. Beyond the physical labor, there's a psychological battle, the loneliness, the relentless watchfulness, the weight of isolation that settles like a shroud around the tower. You find solace in routine, tending the flame, polishing the mirrors, logging the weather and sea conditions, and listening to the storm's symphony. Each task anchors you, a reminder that your presence here matters. You think about the curious fact that some Roman lighthouses were staffed not by solitary keepers, but by small teams, rotating duties to share the burden of vigilance. Your own tower is too small for such luxury, leaving you to shoulder the watch alone. Sometimes that solitude feels like both a curse and a blessing. The storm intensifies, lightning flashing in the distance, illuminating the swirling clouds with eerie brilliance. The tower shudders under the gusts, and a shiver runs down your spine, not from cold, but from the sheer raw energy of nature unleashed. You tighten your grip on the oil jar, topping up the flame's supply, and whisper a quiet prayer for safety. not just for yourself, but for all those out on the sea tonight. Historians still argue whether the ritualistic prayers and offerings once made by lighthouse keepers were rooted in genuine religious belief or practical superstition aimed at warding off bad luck. Either way, they speak to the universal human need to find meaning and protection in the face of uncontrollable forces. As dawn edges nearer, the storm begins to wane, leaving behind a sky washed clean and the sea calm but restless. Your flame, battered but unbowed, continues to shine, a testament to resilience and hope. The relief keeper arrives, soaked and breathless but grateful for the change of guard. You descend the winding stairs with weary limbs but a full heart, knowing your watch, your flame, your steadfast presence has made a difference in the vast, unpredictable dance between man and sea. You find yourself once again enveloped by the cool embrace of night, the lighthouse tower standing as a solitary guardian against the vast darkness that stretches out to the horizon. The faint hum of the sea blends with the crackling of the fire before you, its warm golden light flickering in the brazier and casting long, wavering shadows across the ancient stone walls. The scent of burning oil mingles with the salty air, a familiar perfume that has become the essence of your nights here. Your hands move instinctively, trimming the wick with practiced precision, coaxing the flame to dance steadily rather than flicker wildly in the occasional gusts of sea breeze that sneak through the tower's narrow windows. The flame is more than just a source of light. It is a beacon of hope, a lifeline that has guided countless sailors safely through treacherous waters. You pause for a moment, your gaze drifting out across the dark expanse of water, where the silhouette of a ship appears faintly against the starlit sky. You imagine the faces aboard, their eyes scanning for the glow of your lighthouse, the relief and reassurance that sight must bring after a long night at sea. This connection between you and the distant vessels is intangible, yet profound, a silent conversation carried on the flickering flame. The history of lighthouses like yours is rich and layered, tracing back to the legendary Pharos of Alexandria, whose towering flame was said to be visible from over 30 miles away. Though your own tower is smaller and humbler, the same spirit of ingenuity and human determination pulses through its stones and fire. The bronze mirrors beside you gleam faintly as you polish them carefully, their curved surfaces designed to catch and amplify the flame's light, sending it across the dark waters like a golden arrow. The craftsmanship involved in creating these mirrors is a marvel, considering the limitations of the ancient world. Hammered and polished by skilled hands, they remain a testament to the blend of art and science that defines your role. Historians still debate the exact techniques used and the degree to which Roman keepers innovated upon earlier methods from the Greeks and Egyptians. But there's no question that your lighthouse embodies centuries of accumulated knowledge and care. The night deepens, and the sea outside rages softly, waves lapping against the rocky shore with an unending hypnotic rhythm. The isolation of your watch presses in, a quiet companion that both comforts and challenges you. Your thoughts drift to the daily life of a lighthouse keeper, the blend of routine and unpredictability that shapes each day. You keep detailed logs, noting weather conditions, oil usage, and any unusual occurrences, understanding that your records might one day help others in their vigilance. You recall stories passed down among keepers, tales of storms so fierce they nearly snuffed out the flame, of solitary nights when the only company was the distant howl of the wind and the creak of the tower settling into its ancient foundations. These stories have a way of weaving themselves into your consciousness, shaping your understanding of your role as both a guardian and a witness to the sea's moods. The work is physically demanding, climbing the spiral staircase countless times to tend the flame, carrying heavy amphorae of oil up narrow passages, and maintaining the delicate mirrors and lanterns. Your fingers bear the marks of soot and salt, your skin cracked by the relentless exposure to the elements. Yet, there is a quiet pride in this labor, a sense of purpose that transcends the hardships. Beyond the practical duties, you find solace in small rituals, the precise trimming of wicks, the polishing of metal, the rhythmic lighting and extinguishing of lamps, which provide structure and meaning during the long watches. You think of the superstitions that have grown around lighthouse keeping, the belief that certain rituals could protect the flame, that the fire held a spirit, or that neglect would invite disaster. Historians still debate the origins and significance of these beliefs, whether they stemmed from ancient religious practices or simply the human need for comfort in isolation. Regardless, they add a layer of human complexity to the austere stone tower. As the night progresses, your vigilance sharpens. The wind picks up, rattling the shutters and sending salty spray through the open vents. You adjust your cloak, eyes never straying far from the flame's glow. The sea can be merciless, and your flame the only guide through its capricious darkness. You remind yourself of the countless sailors who owe their lives to this slender thread of light, and the weight of that knowledge steadies your resolve. There's a strange companionship in the lighthouse, the way the flame flickers and dances in response to your care, as if alive, and the whispers of the sea that seep into the stones. You imagine the keepers who came before, their hands tending the same fire, their eyes scanning the same horizon, their spirits somehow intertwined with yours across time. As dawn approaches, the sky begins to lighten, soft shades of pink and gold spilling over the horizon. The flame burns steadily, its purpose fulfilled for another night. You make your final notes in the logbook, careful and precise, and prepare to hand over the watch. The relief keeper arrives, weary but grateful, and you descend the spiral stairs, leaving the flame in capable hands. The first rays of the sun warm the tower's stones, and you breathe deeply, savoring the crisp morning air. Your night's work is done, but the lighthouse's vigil continues, an eternal sentinel against the dark. The scent of damp stone and burning oil mingles in the air as you settle into your post once again, the lighthouse standing steadfast against the encroaching darkness. Outside, the sea churns with restless energy, waves crashing against the cliffs in a relentless rhythm that mirrors the beating of your heart. The flame before you flickers steadily, its golden light caught and amplified by the polished bronze mirrors that gleam faintly in the dim chamber. Your fingers move deftly as you tend to the wick, trimming it just so to keep the flame from sputtering or flaring too high, a delicate balance that requires patience and precision. The flame is your companion and your charge, a fragile thread of light woven into the vast tapestry of night. You imagine the sailors who depend on this beacon, their eyes straining through fog and rain, searching desperately for the guiding glow that promises safe passage. It's humbling to think that your solitary watch can mean the difference between life and death for those brave enough to venture into the unknown. The tower creaks softly around you, ancient stones shifting with the weight of time and weather, each crack and groove a testament to centuries of storms weathered and secrets kept. You've come to think of the lighthouse as a living thing, its stones breathing with the tide and its fire flickering with the hopes of countless souls. You recall the curious tradition among some Roman keepers of carving tiny symbols into the stone walls, images of ships, waves, and mythical sea creatures, perhaps as talismans against misfortune or as silent prayers etched in stone. Historians still debate the meaning of these carvings, whether they were devotional, decorative, or simply the doodles of lonely men. Regardless, they add a layer of mystery and humanity to the tower's austere form. You take a moment to gaze out the narrow windows, watching as the horizon darkens and the first stars begin to twinkle in the sky. The night is vast and deep, a black ocean stretching beyond the sea itself. Somewhere out there, ships glide silently, guided by your unwavering flame. You wonder about their crews, their fears, dreams, and stories. Unknown to you, but forever linked by this shared journey through darkness. The monotony of your tasks belies their importance. Each polish of the mirror, each adjustment of the wick, each careful note in the logbook contributes to a delicate ecosystem of safety. You smile to yourself, thinking of the keeper's jokes and superstitions you've heard whispered over the years, how some claim the flame had a personality, responding to care and attention, or how the fire would flicker erratically if a storm spirit passed nearby. You don't believe in such things, but the stories add warmth to the cold nights and camaraderie among those who share this solitary burden. The oil lamp beside you sputters, its flame wavering momentarily before steadying once more. You refill it carefully, mindful not to spill the precious fuel. The amphorae stored below are limited, and rationing is a constant concern, especially during harsh winters or long stretches without supply ships. You think of the logistical challenges faced by your predecessors, how they coordinated deliveries and maintained communication with coastal towns. The lighthouse, after all, is not just a beacon, but a hub in a wider network of maritime safety. Historians still debate the efficiency and organization of these supply chains, given the empire's vast reach and varied geography, but the keeper's records suggest a surprisingly sophisticated system. The sea outside shifts suddenly, a fresh gust whipping through the tower and sending a shiver down your spine. You brace yourself, pulling your cloak tighter, and return your attention to the flame. The light is a small point of warmth and hope in the cold darkness, a fragile promise against the indifferent ocean. As the hours pass, you feel a growing kinship with the lighthouse, this ancient sentinel that stands resolute, weathering storms and solitude alike. Your thoughts drift to the idea that the flame represents more than safety. It is a symbol of human tenacity and the eternal struggle against the unknown. And as you continue your vigil, the flame burns on, steady, bright, and unwavering, just like the keepers who have come before you, and those who will follow after. The night stretches out before you like a velvet ocean, deep and vast, punctuated only by the steady glow of your lighthouse's flame, a solitary star against the inky blackness. You stand at your post, the ancient stone walls surrounding you like the embrace of a timeless fortress, sheltering your vigil as you tend to the delicate fire that burns tirelessly in the brazier. The air is thick with the mingled scents of salt, smoke, and oil, a familiar and comforting blend that has become the essence of your existence in this isolated tower. Your hands move with practiced ease, trimming the wick just so, coaxing the flame to a steady height, neither too tall to waste precious fuel, nor too low to risk fading into darkness. Outside, the restless sea murmurs against jagged rocks, its voice a constant companion in the stillness of the night. The lighthouse is more than mere stone and fire. It is a symbol of human perseverance, a beacon of hope against the unpredictable fury of nature. As you adjust the polished bronze mirrors, their curved surfaces catching and amplifying the flame's glow, you marvel at the ingenuity embedded in their design. Forged and polished by artisans long gone, these mirrors transform a modest fire into a radiant signal visible for miles, a testament to centuries of engineering and craftsmanship. Historians still debate how much of this technology was inherited from earlier civilizations and how much was Roman innovation, but the importance of such beacons in securing maritime safety is undisputed. You think of the countless ships that rely on this light, the fishermen braving early morning storms, merchant vessels laden with goods from distant lands, and sometimes even military ships guarding the empire's vast coasts. Your flame is their guide through treacherous waters, their promise of safe harbor amid the dark unknown. The isolation of your post presses in like the cold sea breeze that slips through the tower's cracks, but you have grown accustomed to this solitude. It is a solitude shared with those who have come before you, and those who will come after, a brotherhood bound by duty and endurance. The monotonous tasks, polishing mirrors, replenishing oil, logging observations, are rituals that soothe the mind and steady the spirit. Sometimes, the mind wanders to the curious tales told by former keepers, stories of ghostly lights seen dancing on the waves, strange sounds echoing through the tower at night, and the occasional mysterious visitor who appeared out of the fog only to vanish without a trace. Such stories blur the line between fact and folklore, yet they add a layer of mystery and humanity to your lonely watch. You smile at the memory of a particularly whimsical tale about a mischievous sea sprite who supposedly meddled with the flame, causing it to flicker wildly just before a storm. Whether true or not, these legends are a reminder that even in the sternest duties, a spark of imagination keeps the soul alive. The physical demands of your role are unrelenting, carrying heavy amphorae of oil up narrow stairways, cleaning soot and salt from the delicate mirrors, and standing vigil for hours on end. Test your endurance and resolve. Your fingers bear the scars of salt and smoke. Your body aches from the constant climb, and yet there is a quiet pride in this labor. You are a guardian of safety, a keeper of light in a world where darkness means danger and despair. You think about the social standing of lighthouse keepers in Roman society. While some regarded you as mere servants or laborers, others recognized the critical importance of your role, granting you modest privileges and respect. Historians still argue about the exact nature of your status, whether you were isolated outcasts or valued custodians, but the truth likely lies somewhere in between. The night deepens, and the sea's song grows louder, the waves crashing in a rhythmic hymn to the eternal struggle between man and nature. You take a moment to gaze out the narrow windows, watching the distant horizon where faint lights flicker from faraway ships. Each one is a story, a life intertwined with your flame's glow. Your thoughts drift to the logistical challenges of your position. Supply ships sometimes face delays, and oil reserves can dwindle dangerously low, forcing keepers to ration fuel carefully. There have been times when the flame sputtered perilously due to poor quality oil or insufficient supplies, risking lives and livelihoods. You meticulously monitor your stock, aware that your prudence is as vital as your vigilance. The tower creaks softly around you, an ancient guardian itself weathering centuries of storms and solitude. You run your hand along the cool stone, feeling the history etched into every crack and crevice. This lighthouse has witnessed empires rise and fall, ships sail and sink, and countless dawns break over restless seas. As you prepare to log the night's observations, your thoughts linger on the flame's symbolism, a fragile yet steadfast light pushing back the darkness, a reminder of human resilience and hope. The first pale light of dawn begins to seep through the tower's narrow windows, bathing the stones in a soft glow. Your watch nears its end, but your flame remains unwavering, ready to guide sailors safely into a new day. You breathe deeply, the mingled scents of salt and smoke filling your lungs, and feel a quiet pride in your enduring role. The lighthouse, with its ancient stones and flickering fire, stands as a testament to the enduring human spirit, a beacon shining brightly against the vast, unpredictable sea. The night wraps around you like a thick velvet cloak as you settle into the familiar rhythm of your vigil, the lighthouse standing tall and unwavering against the endless black sea. The scent of burning oil mingles with the sharp salt breeze that sneaks through the narrow cracks in the tower's ancient stones, filling your lungs with a briny freshness that reminds you of the ocean's ceaseless presence. Your eyes are fixed on the flame that dances gently in the brazier before you, its golden light reflected and magnified by the curved bronze mirrors that circle the lantern room. With careful hands, you trim the wick, mindful of the delicate balance required to keep the fire steady yet bright, a task that has become second nature after many long nights. The flame is not merely a source of light. It is the lifeline for countless sailors navigating treacherous coastal waters under cover of darkness. You think about the crews aboard those distant ships, their eyes scanning the horizon for the reassuring glow of your beacon. their hearts pounding with hope and fear. Your role, though isolated and often monotonous, carries profound responsibility. The craftsmanship of the mirrors continues to fascinate you, the way their hammered and polished surfaces capture the flickering firelight and send it across miles of tumultuous sea. These mirrors are relics of ancient skill and ingenuity, fashioned by hands long gone but still essential to your nightly duty. Historians still debate the origins of lighthouse technology, pondering how much Roman innovation contributed to maritime safety compared to earlier civilizations, such as the Greeks and Egyptians. Yet, whatever the truth, the lighthouse stands as a testament to human determination to master nature's perils. Outside, the relentless sound of crashing waves fills the air, the sea pounding against rocky shores with an unending hypnotic rhythm. The wind whips through the tower's narrow windows, bringing occasional gusts that threaten to extinguish your flame. You steady yourself, shielding the fire with careful movements, knowing that even a momentary lapse could spell disaster. Your thoughts drift to the isolation inherent in your post, the solitude punctuated only by the murmur of waves, distant cries of seabirds, and the occasional creak of the ancient structure settling into the earth. It is a solitude that tests both body and spirit, but one that you have come to accept as part of your duty. You meticulously record observations in your logbook, the behavior of the flame, weather conditions, changes in tide and wind, and any unusual occurrences. These notes are vital for future keepers and for maritime authorities who rely on accurate information to warn and guide seafarers. The work demands a steady hand and an attentive mind, qualities that you have cultivated through endless repetition and quiet contemplation. Occasionally, you pause to clean soot from the bronze mirrors, rubbing carefully to preserve their gleam, aware that their brilliance is critical to your lighthouse's effectiveness. You handle the heavy amphorae of oil with care, knowing that your supplies are limited and that any waste could jeopardize the beacon's endurance. The logistics of maintaining the flame are as challenging as the watch itself. Supply ships are sometimes delayed by storms or political turmoil, and rationing becomes a matter of survival rather than convenience. You recall tales from veteran keepers about desperate nights when oil ran perilously low, forcing them to improvise and ration fuel just to keep the light burning until relief arrived. These stories are warnings etched into your memory, underscoring the delicate balance you maintain each night. Your mind wanders to the myths and legends that surround lighthouse keeping, the ghost stories whispered in harbor taverns, the supposed sea spirits said to meddle with the flame, and the rituals believed to ward off misfortune. Historians still argue whether these tales were born of superstition or served practical purposes to keep lonely keepers vigilant. You smile at the thought of these stories, recognizing in them a shared human attempt to find meaning and comfort amid isolation. The physical toll of your work is unmistakable. Your hands are roughened by salt and soot. Your muscles ache from climbing the spiral staircase countless times, and the chill sea air seeps into your bones despite layers of clothing. Yet, there is an undeniable pride in your labor, a sense of connection to all who have tended these fires before you, and all who will come after. The lighthouse is not just a tower or a tool, it is a living legacy, a symbol of resilience against the wild and unpredictable sea. As the hours stretch on, your vigilance never wanes. The flame remains steady, a steadfast guardian against the consuming darkness. You imagine the sailors guided by your light, the relief and gratitude in their eyes as they navigate safely past hidden reefs and rocky shoals. Their lives, unknown to you, are woven into the flame's glow, a silent testament to the power of your watch. Finally, as dawn's pale light begins to touch the horizon, you prepare your logbook for the day's entry, noting every detail with care. The night's work is nearly done, but the lighthouse's vigil continues. You take a deep breath of the crisp morning air, feeling a quiet satisfaction that your flame has burned true, steadfast against the vast, indifferent sea. In this moment, you are part of something far greater, a chain of light stretching across time, a human beacon pushing back the darkness and guiding others safely home. The first light of dawn tinges the horizon with a faint blush as you emerge from the tower's shadow, the weight of the night's vigil slowly lifting from your shoulders. The salty breeze carries the cries of waking seabirds, their wings slicing the crisp morning air, as if celebrating the arrival of another day. Your body aches from the climb and the constant attention demanded by the flame, but there is a strange comfort in these familiar pains, a reminder that your duty is both physical and spiritual. You descend the spiral staircase carefully, each step echoing softly against the ancient stones, until you reach the storeroom, where amphorae of precious oil wait like silent sentinels. Handling them requires a careful balance between urgency and reverence. This oil is the lifeblood of your lighthouse, the fuel that keeps the flame alive and sailors safe. The supply is never guaranteed. Storms, political strife, and the unpredictability of the sea itself all conspire to delay deliveries. You think back to tales told by older keepers about times when oil reserves ran dangerously low, forcing desperate measures and fraying nerves. These stories linger in your mind, a testament to the precarious nature of your work. After replenishing the brazier, you take a moment to wipe the sweat from your brow, the smell of salt and smoke clinging stubbornly to your skin. The tower's cold stone walls feel almost warm under your touch, soaked with centuries of history and countless nights spent under starry skies. Outside, the harbor stirs to life, fishermen preparing their nets, merchants loading goods onto ships, and the distant hum of the town awakening from its slumber. The lighthouse is both a sentinel and a symbol of civilization's reach, standing firm where land meets the wild sea. You think about the technology behind your flame, marveling at the blend of science and art that allows a modest fire to be seen for miles. The bronze mirrors, polished to a radiant sheen, focus the light into a beacon that cuts through fog and darkness. Historians still debate the precise materials and techniques used in crafting these mirrors, with some suggesting the Romans borrowed methods from earlier cultures, while others argue for unique innovations. Whatever the truth, the mirrors remain a vital part of your nightly watch. The night's solitude has given way to the bustle of day, but your role remains crucial. Mariners depend on your flame as a guide through treacherous coastal waters, where hidden reefs and shifting sands have claimed many unwary ships. You feel a deep sense of connection to these unknown souls, their lives intertwined with the flame you tend so carefully. The lighthouse is more than stone and fire. It is a beacon of hope and a guardian against chaos. Your thoughts wander to the community of keepers scattered along the empire's coastlines. Though isolated physically, you share a bond forged through shared responsibility and stories passed in rare moments of contact. Letters exchanged between keepers tell of storms weathered, close calls avoided, and the ever-present challenges of supply and maintenance. Some scholars debate how well organized these networks were, given the empire's vast size and diverse geography, but the records suggest a surprisingly efficient system of communication and support. You pause to consider the superstitions and rituals that have grown around lighthouse keeping, tales of spirits inhabiting the flame, charms placed within the tower's stones, and prayers whispered during storms. While some dismiss these as mere folklore, others argue they played a vital role in sustaining the mental resilience of lonely keepers. These beliefs add a human dimension to your work, a reminder that even the most practical duties are shaped by the hopes and fears of those who perform them. The day stretches ahead, filled with tasks both mundane and essential, repairing weathered stonework, sharpening tools, and preparing logs for the next night's watch. Yet, amid this routine, there is a quiet dignity and purpose. You are the link between land and sea, between civilization and the wild, and your flame is a symbol of that connection. As the sun climbs higher, warming the tower's stones and casting long shadows across the shore. You take a moment to reflect on your place in this ancient tradition. The lighthouse has stood here long before you, a steadfast guardian through countless storms and calm nights. And though your watch may end with the dawn, the flame will burn on, a perpetual light against the dark. The night deepens around you, thick and velvety, with only the soft lapping of waves against the rocky shore below and the distant call of a night bird to break the stillness. Inside the lighthouse, the warm glow of your flame flickers gently, reflected 100-fold in the polished bronze mirrors that curve around the lantern room like watchful eyes. Your hands move with practiced care as you trim the wick, coaxing the flame into a steady blaze that will reach across the dark sea, a golden thread pulling sailors safely to harbor. The scent of burning olive oil mingles with the crisp salt air, filling the confined space with an almost comforting warmth despite the chill outside. You think of the ships out there, some merchant vessels laden with goods from far-flung provinces, others small fishing boats braving the night for their daily catch. And you imagine the faces aboard, tense and hopeful, as they search for your light through fog and storm. Your role is humble, yet vital. You are the unseen guardian whose flame means the difference between safe passage and disaster. The weight of this responsibility is both a burden and a source of quiet pride. As your hands polish the edges of the bronze mirrors, you reflect on the ingenuity involved in their crafting. These mirrors are no mere decoration. They are precision instruments hammered, shaped, and polished to exact curves that amplify the fire's light and send it far across the waves. Historians still argue about the precise materials and techniques used in creating them, whether the Romans inherited their mirror-making skills from Greek or Egyptian predecessors or developed unique innovations. What remains clear is the crucial role these mirrors played in transforming a simple fire into a lighthouse beacon visible for miles. Outside the tower, the sea's voice rises and falls, waves crashing rhythmically against jagged rocks, sending up salty spray that occasionally drifts through the open vents. The air smells of brine and burning oil, a scent so familiar it is almost a second skin. The night air is cool but carries an undercurrent of tension, a reminder that storms can arise suddenly, and your vigilance must never falter. You think of the isolation you endure, hours, sometimes days, with only the sea and your flame for company. The spiral staircase that winds through the tower has become both your pathway and your prison, a constant reminder of the vertical journey between solitude and connection. Your thoughts drift to the legends whispered among lighthouse keepers, tales of ghostly lights dancing on the water, strange sounds echoing through the tower walls, and spirits said to guard the flame. Historians remain divided on whether these stories stem from superstition, born of isolation, or are echoes of older religious beliefs meant to protect the flame and the keeper. These stories add a human dimension to your lonely watch, a reminder that beyond the science and duty lies a rich tapestry of belief and fear. The physical demands of your role are unrelenting. Your hands are cracked and roughened by salt and smoke. Your muscles ache from climbing the narrow, spiraling steps countless times each night, and the cold sea air seeps through even the thickest clothing. Yet, despite these hardships, you find a deep satisfaction in the steady rhythm of your tasks. Carrying heavy amphorae of precious oil up from storage, tending the flame with meticulous attention, polishing the mirrors to a brilliant sheen, and keeping detailed logs of weather conditions and the flame's behavior, these routines ground you and connect you to a lineage of keepers who have stood watch for centuries. The challenge of supply is ever present. The oil you burn is a precious resource, sometimes delayed by storms or political turmoil that disrupt shipping. You ration carefully, aware that any waste could mean the difference between a guiding light and a flickering shadow. Tales from previous keepers echo in your mind. Nights spent praying the flame would hold through a tempest. Moments of desperate ingenuity to keep the fire alive when reserves ran dangerously low. Your meticulous logs become a vital record, not only for your own watch, but for those who will follow, a living archive of the lighthouse's story. You think also of the social standing of lighthouse keepers in Roman society. While some considered you a mere servant or laborer, others respected your critical role in safeguarding lives and commerce. Historians still debate the precise nature of your status, but you know firsthand that your work commands a quiet dignity, earned in sweat and flame. As you stand vigil, the night sky slowly lightens at the edges, heralding the approach of dawn. The flame remains steady, a golden beacon pushing back the darkness, a symbol of human resilience against the vast, unpredictable sea. You prepare to hand over the watch, knowing that while your shift ends, the lighthouse's eternal vigilance continues. This tower, with its ancient stones and shimmering flame, stands as a timeless guardian, a beacon of hope, safety, and the enduring human spirit. The quiet moments before dawn feel heavier tonight, as if the sea itself is holding its breath in anticipation of the coming light. You stand once more in the lantern room, the familiar warmth of the flame radiating against the cool stone walls, a small sun burning steadily through the darkness. The bronze mirrors gleam softly, capturing every flicker and sending a steady beam out across the restless waves, a steadfast guardian against the encroaching night. Your fingers, steady and sure despite fatigue, trim the wick carefully, coaxing the flame to the perfect height, a dance of fire that has become as natural as breathing. Around you, the tower hums with the weight of centuries, the stones soaked in salt and stories, the spiraling staircase a constant reminder of the many keepers who have stood here before, their lives intertwined with the light you tend. You breathe in the mingled scents of oil and sea, the smell both grounding and invigorating, a reminder of your vital role at the edge of the world. Outside, the sea whispers its eternal song, waves crashing in endless rhythm against jagged rocks, the wind carrying the faint cries of seabirds returning to roost. The vast, dark expanse beyond the tower seems less intimidating with your light piercing its depths, a golden promise to weary sailors navigating treacherous waters. You think about the countless lives that rely on this flame, the unseen gratitude of fishermen, merchants, and soldiers alike, each trusting your watchfulness to guide them safely home. The physical toll of your duty is undeniable. Your body aches from the constant climb, your skin bears the marks of salt and smoke, and exhaustion tugs at your eyelids. Yet within the monotony lies a profound purpose, a rhythm that connects you to the pulse of the empire and the heartbeat of the sea. Historians still debate the exact organization and social status of lighthouse keepers, whether you were isolated outcasts or respected custodians. But your own experience affirms the dignity of your role. You record final notes in your logbook, careful to document weather conditions, oil consumption, and any unusual occurrences. These records are more than routine. They are lifelines for future keepers and vital tools for maritime safety. The supply of oil, always a concern, is currently sufficient, but the unpredictability of the sea and politics looms large in your thoughts. You recall stories of past nights when reserves ran perilously low and keepers faced long hours battling to keep the flame alive. Such tales remind you of the fragile balance you maintain between light and dark, safety and peril. Your mind drifts to the superstitions and rituals that surround your trade, the whispered prayers, carved talismans hidden in secret niches, and legends of spirits that protect or haunt the flame. Whether born of fear or faith, these beliefs enrich the human experience behind the stoic stone walls. As dawn's first light bleeds into the sky, softening shadows and casting the tower in gentle hues of pink and gold, you feel a quiet satisfaction. Your flame has burned steadily through the night, a beacon of hope and safety for those who need it most. The watch will soon pass to another, but the lighthouse will endure, its light a symbol of resilience and connection across time and tide. You step out onto the balcony, the fresh morning air filling your lungs, the sound of the waking harbor below stirring the world back to life. For a moment, you simply stand there, embracing the stillness, the peace that follows a night of steadfast duty. The lighthouse, your constant companion and guardian, continues its silent vigil, a beacon shining bright against the vast, uncertain sea. Now, as the script's final glow fades gently to rest, let the steady rhythm of waves and the soft hum of night guide you into calm dreams. Imagine the flame's warm light stretching across the dark water, a guardian of souls and stories, a symbol of human courage and hope in a world often shadowed by uncertainty. Rest easy, knowing that somewhere a keeper stands watch, and somewhere else a light burns for you. End of script. Sweet dreams.